Welcome back to another episode of Whitney's World podcast. I'm your host, Whitney Morgan Ward, and I am so thankful wherever you're at on this planet that you are tuning in to this message today. This message is literally why I started this podcast. This is why Whitney's World exists. This is my story, and I have been waiting 51 episodes to share this with you all. This is how I ended up in Florida and why I'm here doing what I'm doing today, trying to help anyone that is in need of help. This message goes out to anyone that is struggling with domestic violence, anyone that is trapped in an abusive relationship, anyone that is stuck in a place where you feel like there's no hope and you don't know what to do. Well, I'm here to tell you that I'm a survivor and I can relate to whatever you're going through. And this message is for you or anyone you know, so please share it. And this is my story. 2.5 years ago, my life got flipped absolutely upside down. I had an amazing career in Colorado Springs. I was serving buyers and sellers that were looking to buy homes and sell their houses, and I had built an empire for myself. I was a young entrepreneur from the time that I was 23 years old, and this is a long story. I'm going to explain what happened and how my tower came shattering down in one moment from dating someone that I had no business dating. Now, I want to preference this with saying that there were obviously red flags that I completely ignored. And if you are anything like me, and maybe you are stuck in your first narcissistic relationship, this relationship trapped me and left me feeling vulnerable, alone, and afraid. I struggled with having relationships with family and friends. I started to get separated from those people, and many people kept asking me, "Why are you dating him? You're so much better than that, Whitney." Well, until you're in a narcissistic relationship, you don't understand what is going on in the mind games that are being played, the love bombing that happens, the erratic behavior that you don't understand and you can't relate. Now, I've been diving into narcissistic relationships. I've been listening to these things, and I've come to the conclusion that no matter what, these narcissists look for empathic people that are loving, that are caring, and that are probably like you and me. So, what I learned is to never do it again. And after 2.5 years of an intense self-development and personal growth journey, as well as being on a spiritual journey, though this story is very close to my heart and very hard to and very close to my heart. This message is only to bring awareness and hope into the world. I am no longer the same version of myself that I was. I have now woken up, thankfully. And again, I am in a completely different place than I was. I never stopped believing in myself, and I kept pushing forward, knowing that my life was going to get better, knowing that I was going to understand one day why my life came shattering down into a million pieces. when this happened to me, I kept thinking, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Though I don't believe I did anything to deserve it, what was going on was deeper than I ever knew. I never valued myself to the extent that I should have. I didn't believe in myself for some reason. I think we can all relate with that. And when my life came shattering down, I had to look inside to find out, why does this keep happening to me? Because this was not the first relationship that I had put myself into that I should have never been in. So when I moved to Florida 2.5 years ago, I went on a journey within to find myself, within to search, to ask these questions of, why did this happen to me? In my endeavors, I found out the real reason. And that is the question. Things happen to us in life for a reason, for your higher self, for something to come up in your awareness that you need to work on and heal. And so this is what I've done. 2.5 years ago, I found myself dating a guy, and I should have never dated him. Literally from the first night I met him, I knew my soul was telling me, but I didn't listen. I kept dating. I kept doing things against what I felt inside. And I didn't know who I was. I didn't respect myself. I didn't love myself or value myself at that time. So I kept on going against how I felt. And I've definitely grown through that, but it's taken me 2.5 years. So after ups and downs in our relationship, multiple times of breaking up, all these times of not trusting him, feeling like something weird was going on, I just kept going. And doing that cost me everything. Cost me my career. It cost me $13,000 plus of my possessions, my computer, everything. I ended up being at a party, and a girl had walked up to me and basically said that he was cheating on me, which I had always felt, but I never had proof. And at that moment, this was December 17th of 2021, I knew I was not going to go into the new year into this toxic relationship that I had been dealing with for over a year. And I just told him at that moment he needed to leave and I was done. He tried to tell me it wasn't true. She was trying to cause drama. And I said, I don't care. I'm not doing this drama anymore. I'm not living my life like this any longer. And I ended up finding out months later that all of this stuff started going on behind the scenes that I didn't know about. But I had blocked him from my phone, and he was calling me from no caller ID, but I just ignored it. I ended up staying downtown with my friends, and I went back to the hotel with my lender and his wife, and we just sat in the room and we talked. And I remember crying, and I remember him telling me, Whitney, you're such an incredible human. You don't need to do this. You don't deserve to be treated like this, because it had been a year of ups and downs. It was very toxic. Well, I ended up going home. I walked into my house about 3 a.m, and I do remember that he had texted one of my very close friends at the time, and he told her that he was going to take my dogs. Well, in my heart, I didn't think he was going to hurt them, and he didn't. So that's good. That's great. And when I got home that night, I opened my door, and everything inside of my house was completely destroyed. I never knew what the inside of a TV looked like. But the inside of a TV, there's actually sheets and layers, and they're like small sheets. Well, my TV had been ripped off the wall, smashed on the ground. I have a green thumb and I have plants, and my plants had been thrown everywhere. There was soil and dirt everywhere. This is like a week before Christmas. My Christmas tree was on the ground, snapped in half, and my laptop, I had a Mac Air at the time. My laptop was smashed and literally split in half. I had an iPad that was thrown out the wall. And I remember just breaking down, screaming and crying. I was completely alone. I walked in the kitchen and he had done some damage in there. I ended up walking up the stairs and I had more plants that were damaged. My office was damaged. The blinds were broken. My computer was thrown on the ground. And I had another TV in a guest room that was ripped off the wall. When I entered my bedroom, my bed was flipped. My curtains were ripped off the wall. My lamps were broken, ripped. My end tables. I mean, the entire house was completely and utterly destroyed. I never thought that someone that told me that they loved me every day was capable of doing something like this. I never in a million years thought that this would happen to me. Because in my head, I did have love for this guy. And I ended up calling my friend that night. And I just remember screaming and crying. And I was like, he destroyed everything. He destroyed everything. And he said, you have to call the cops. So I ended up calling the police. They were like, oh, we have a dispatcher on the way. And I was like, well, when are they coming? And they couldn't tell me. And I was scared because I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know where he was around the corner. I didn't know what was going on. And they finally showed up within a few minutes, thankfully. When they walked in, I immediately had this like sense of safety. And I was so glad that someone was there because I didn't know what to do. Like, this was the most traumatic thing that had ever happened to me. And they told me, you know, Whitney, we're really glad that you weren't here because when we see something like this in someone's home with the amount of rage that has gone on, he said it doesn't end up well for the other person. And at that point, I knew that I was done. Like, that was the point, obviously. Well, it's not obvious because there's a lot of women and I don't know if this happens to men a lot, but I do know that there are a lot of women and people that get put in this situation and they go back. But at that point, I knew I was done, that I was no longer going to play this game anymore. And that really woke me up. So they ended up, I didn't have cameras at the time, and they asked me to, like, how can we, you know, figure out it was him? And I said, well, my iPad, I can see I had blocked him on my phone, but at the time, like the text messages still came through on my iPad. So I plugged it in the charger. Thankfully, it was dead at the time, but it just got thrown against the wall, but it wasn't broken. And I was able to see, it's like 30 something text messages. And he said that he was coming to my house and then that he was in my house. And these are like separate texts. And then that I'm try not to say it without cussing because I don't want to curse on the web. But he said, I effed your stuff up, pretty much is what he said. So at that point, we were able to, pin him for doing all this damage to my home, thankfully, because there are also situations where people can do things, but if you can't pin them to the scene, you have no proof it was them. So thankfully, it was able to, it was the evidence that this had been done. So they ended up telling me that night after they took all the photos and everything that I couldn't stay there because they were like, you're just not safe. So I ended up at it was 5:30 in the morning by this time. So I ended up checking into the hotel. I didn't sleep. And I ended up checking out at 8 in the morning, 8:30. I ended up calling a couple friends, a husband and wife. I told them what happened. I was with them the night before. And they ended up coming over, and she had work to do. So her husband came in and he just started cleaning everything up. He loaded everything in the car and he threw everything away for me. And I remember sitting there being like, wow, I literally didn't touch anything. I just couldn't believe what was happening. And I got a phone call from him the next day, and he basically was alluding to he didn't know what had happened. And I just said, you'll find out. You got to stop calling me. So at that point, once my house got cleaned up, he hadn't been arrested yet. And I kind of went into hiding. I stayed at some friends with my dogs, and it was extremely difficult to go through. I had no family there at the time, and I just remember feeling so unsafe and so hurt that someone that says they love you could do something like this to you. And I just knew that he was going to pay for what he had done. So I ended up flying to Virginia, where my parents lived at the time. And my dad had said to me, Whitney, I think it's really time that you think about leaving Colorado. And I looked at my dad and I said, I know, Dad, I'm leaving. Have to leave. Because I was no longer safe, literally. So before I left, he did end up going to jail. And what's crazy is I kept getting all of these phone calls about you're the victim of a crime. These are your rights. These are the people that can help you. Do you need help? All these things. But everyone kept telling me that I'm a victim. I'm a victim. I'm a victim. And I didn't feel like a victim really. I did, but I just felt so angry and hurt that someone would do this to me. I worked so hard for all of these things and my whole home, and now I'm no longer safe in my home. And so when I was in Virginia, I ended up signing up for real estate school in Florida. And when I signed up for real estate school, there was a weight lifted off my chest. And I had always been manifesting moving back to Florida. I knew that I was going to end up back in Florida because I'm from Florida. We lived in Colorado for 20 years, which I've talked about on my podcast before. Well, when I flew home, I ended up telling one of the team I was on, because I think I flew home January 3rd and my course was January 7th. And then it was a week-long course. So I ended up telling everyone I'm taking school. And, at this point, people knew that what had happened to me. And so I just told everyone, I'm leaving. I have to move. And I ended up going to real estate school for the week. And when I was getting my real estate license when I was 23 in Colorado, it took me 6 times to pass my real estate course, Colorado test. And so every single time, I'm not even kidding you, every time I would take the test, I would fail one of the 2 tests by 1 point. And I'm like, this is a conspiracy. This is crazy. So I just had a lot of anxiety about real estate school again and all of that. And I ended up like studying every night after I was in class for it's like 7 hours. I studied every night, and I ended up passing the school test because you have to pass the school test to take the state test. So I end up passing the school test, and I'm like, a weight lifted off. Okay. So in Florida, before you take the real estate course, you have to do your fingerprints and background check before they'll allow you to even take the state test. So I end up taking the state test because what's crazy, and like this is the whole path of when you're supposed to make a change and you're following the path, like doors start to open up for you that you can't even understand. So I end up going up to Denver at the time, and I'm going to get my fingerprints done. And I'd called in before, and they're like, well, you just need them to go to Florida. They're like, the only 2 states in the entire United States of America that their fingerprints talk digitally are Colorado and Florida. The only 2 states in the entire United States of America. So instead of having to like do it on the card and mail it in, they took my prints, they sent them to Florida within, I think it was like a week. They ended up accepting my fingerprints. My background check was good, obviously, and I was able to move on. So that was like another door and another like sign that this is exactly what I'm meant to do. So I ended up scheduling the test for like a week later, and I missed a big event that I really wanted to go to, but I'm glad I didn't go because I really needed to get to Florida to restart my life as quickly as possible. And so as I am studying, I end up taking the test the next day for the Florida test, and I go through all the like 120 questions, I think, and I hit submit, and it said I passed. And I just started crying. Like I was now on my way to my new life. All the doors just opened for me. Like obviously I studied a lot. I tried a lot. I was very stressed, but all the doors just started leading me to exactly where I was meant to be, which is here in Florida. And so I ended up after that was like the end, it was like February. I called my lender. I said, I need to file my taxes. I ended up getting all my stuff to the tax guy, sent all my checks. And then literally like 3 weeks later, I was house hunting in Florida. I ended up buying a house here, and I left Colorado April 7th of 2022. I pulled into my driveway April 7th of 2022. And that was a restart of my new life. That was the new beginning. And all of that trauma and that pain that I had to endure and go through has led me right here, right now, and I'm talking to you. So when I got to Florida was when my healing did not even start. It did and it didn't, because I still had to engage in court hearings, and we ended up like basically giving him a 2-year deferred felony sentence. So I kept getting notifications that he was back in jail, and I had to keep seeing this out because I was owed a lot of money, and I wanted to make sure that on my end, I was being strong and making sure that he was going to basically pay for the crimes that were committed against me. Now, there were other things that happened with other women, and those women ended up dropping the charges, but I was not going to drop the charges because I didn't see how that benefited anyone. When I got a notification for like the fourth or fifth time in January of 2023 that he was back in jail, when I logged into the court hearing, they had said, now there's a minor involved and some craziness happened. But what I want to say is the same thing that happened to me in my house years before this was the same thing that happened to the little girl in her room. And I just felt so sad because that trauma that was put into my life and that trauma that I've had to work through and go through, I was like, is this person ever going to learn? Like, is this person ever going to wake up to the fact that you can't keep hurting people and get away with it? And so in that moment, when I had heard that the same thing had happened again for the second time, I just felt called to bring awareness, to speak out about my story. And I will say this is a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be to speak out about this. I really didn't think it was going to be this difficult, but I ended up going on Facebook and I posted a 5-minute video. I really wanted to tell everyone in Colorado Springs why I'd really left, because it was important to me, because I did have a successful business and I feel like I was just so upset with the fact that these behaviors were continuing. So I ended up going on Facebook. I posted a video and I had told people why I had left. I really wanted to bring awareness to the situation because it wasn't fair to me that I had to endure this trauma and this pain. And now more and more women and children were too. When I ended up posting it, I got my inbox was flooded with a few men, but mainly women of all ages, talking about how something similar has happened to them, or they are currently going through this exact same situation. And in that moment, and these moments where I'd get these messages, my heart broke. And also, I didn't feel alone anymore. I didn't feel like I was the only one that had gone through this, because a lot of people don't speak out about this. A lot of people do not talk about the trauma. We are really taught in society that when these things happen to us, that we should just shove them down and move on. And though there are times that, yes, we have to do that because we live in this society, that is absolutely not the way that we should be living. That is absolutely not the way that we should be teaching our children to do things. And there has to be a level of awareness and healing that has to come so that when these things happen, we can stick by each other's sides and we can comfort each other in these times. Because these times are very fragile. And for many, they can be life-shattering. For me, like I had said earlier, I've been on a 2.5-year healing journey. And I do not hold resentment anymore. I have forgiven. But now I feel called to share this and to bring awareness and to let anyone know that if you're struggling with something like this, you're not alone. And there are so many people in the world that have gone through this. And I don't believe the right thing is to just shove it down and move on. We have to heal our trauma. We have to go within ourselves and ask the question, why is this happening for me? Because in life, we are given signals. As for me in this relationship, I was given many, many signals and I ignored them. Then my world was like, Whitney, you are not going down the right path. And it woke me up and it gave me a massive signal. And thankfully, that was the one I listened to. Not all the other times, not all the times on vacations where things got absolutely insane, and not all the times that things were posted on me about me on Facebook, not those signals. This was the one I listened to. This was the signal that transformed my life, where my tower came smashing down into a million pieces, but it gave me the opportunity to rebuild. It gave me the opportunity to help others. This trauma and this moment in life was so hard for me, and my heart broke, and my soul felt like it had broke. But I was given the opportunity to crack my heart open. I was given the opportunity to reset and to restart. And though my reset has been very hard, it has been the most rewarding and the most beautiful thing that I could ever in my life explain to you. I was given a second chance. I was given the opportunity to forgive. I was given the opportunity to stand in a place where something tried to break me down, but I stood up stronger. I have now built a new tower on a stronger foundation, a much stronger, more solid foundation. I have transformed the person that I was to who I am now. There were a lot of toxic behaviors that I used to have that I have transcended through. For instance, I used to smoke a lot of weed. I used to drink a lot. And I also used to do cocaine. I have since then laid those things down. I've let them go. I have learned so much about myself. I have accepted myself. I have went within myself to pull out this new version, to allow this version of me that was always inside of me, that always wanted to come out of me. I let her come out. I freed myself by the grace of God from the bondage and the trap that I never felt good enough and I never felt enough. I let all of that go. I became who I am today. A strong entrepreneur, a businesswoman, a realtor, a podcaster, a content creator. I'm working on coaching, writing a book, building a new business, a new empire. I currently today have 8 houses under contract. I just got my biggest listing of all time, a $915,000 under contract this weekend. I have a business partner in Colorado Springs. We have 2 deals under contract. So that's really 10 deals right now. I say all this to say that you can reset your life. You can restart. You will be given an opportunity to do that. But you have to make the choice. You have to decide that you want something better. You have to decide that your life matters, that you are worthy of this. You have to be willing to look within, to go into the shadow of your own soul, to let the light shine inside, to then shine out into the world. We all have trauma. We all have something to share with others. We've all gone through horrible things in life. And if you don't feel like you've gone through something horrible, well, that's amazing. Because going through these things and feeling this pain is not ideal. But you can take your pain and turn it into purpose. You can take these times where your life comes shattering down and you can look at it and say, what does this have to teach me? Because this life is about expansion, learning, evolving. And I can tell you right now that if I would have never gone through what I went through, I might not be here today. And for whatever reason, I had to go through that so that I can be here, so that I can overcome. And I am just here to tell you that if this story resonates with you, there is hope. If you're in a relationship or going through something where you feel trapped, you have to make a choice. You have to choose a new life for yourself. And it is hard. Making the choice to change who you are, to change your identity, to change the version of yourself is not for the faint of heart. It is not an easy path. But I am telling you right now, it is 1,000,000% worth it. And you are going to go on a journey of forgiving people, of letting things go, of not holding resentment, of being brave, of being open to change and new starts and new beginnings. And that is what is waiting on the other side of your trauma and on the other side of your pain. New beginnings, a new start, and a new life. So, this is what I waited so long to tell all of you. I'm not even sure what I said. I let this come from my heart. And sharing this story, to be honest, was a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. And I really want to just re-record it, but I've never done that, and I'm not going to do that today. This is where Whitney's world began. Whitney's world began because of this story that I just told you. I was left with nothing to gain everything. And that is my message today. I hope that this resonated with you. I'm in a new studio. I got everything new set up. I'm very excited. I now have a space to have guests on. I now have a space to be more creative. The lighting is better. I'm very excited about the future. I'm very excited about continuing to share my journey, continuing to open up, continuing to teach you, continuing to be alongside of you on your journey, but always trying to be as honest and as vulnerable as I can, because there are a lot of people that are not. I don't want to be one of those people. I believe that I went through all of that pain to turn it into my purpose, to be able to let you know that if you are going through this, I can relate. And I've had to fight like hell to change who I am, to change my life, to be a better version of myself so that I can be in service of other people. And that is my goal. So thank you guys very much for tuning in to this week's episode. If this resonated with you, I would love to hear from you. If you have gone through something similar, I would love if you would share your story like I have shared mine today. I love you guys very much. I hope you have an incredible week. And I'll be back next week with another episode of Whitney's World Podcast. As always, 5678. Let's go. This podcast is brought to you by yours truly, me, Whitney Ward. I'm a licensed realtor in Colorado and Florida. I would love the opportunity to connect with you if you're looking to buy or sell real estate. You live in another state? No problem. I pride myself on connecting with the best and top realtors around. DM me on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook. I'd love to help you with your real estate goals. Chat soon. Let's get back to the show.
You could tell I never found love, always found drugs in the bottom of a bag, but I could never touch how you felt when I laugh or I smile, but I guess I never felt that. And it's sad to say, I'm staring at the sun, but the clouds are gray. I'm feeling kinda down, but I got one to take. She says she want me now, but I got money to make. So I'm distant, I'm just sensing she ain't grabbing what I put down. But I'ma pick it up, cause I need to pick up how I find myself at night, but lost in the morn. And I can find the energy to rise. I'm torn between life and the reaper. Bridges I burn, I built them pretty strong, I think it's time to return. My faded path lit, I'm staring at feet. I'm looking in the mirror at the face of defeat. I let hope build, they steal it with a smile. I always wonder why I get a grip. I feel I can't move like this, I'm smooth like this. Why I'm always feeling dark, looking death in the mist. You can find me with the shadows in the gallows for the dead. See a demon on my back, feel the sadness in my head. In the mirror it's clear, we inching closer to death. But I'm only ever breathing when I'm taking a step. So where my head at? Where my sense of worth? I guess I'll have to find it on a journey to birth. My confidence back, I'm digging deep in my chest. Take a breath, let it out, lay your worries to rest.
Do I feel happy in life? I'm not just generally happy. If I'm generally anything, I guess I'm generally miserable.